Hello and welcome to the Cloud Chronicles. I'm Joey Dantoni. I'm Principal Cloud Architect at 3Cloud, and I have John Morehouse with me. And today we're going to be talking about Azure SQL Database, an overview of the service. It's a long-running service. You heard us talk with Bob Ward about how it was the second service in all of Azure. And I'm going to let John introduce himself before we jump in.
Sure. Hi, I'm John Morehouse. I'm a principal consultant with DTU and Associates, and this is probably one of my favorite SKUs of Azure. I love this product.
Just to add some confusion, John, I've landed on the new Azure SQL Hub. If you don't know, Azure SQL is a marketing term that Microsoft uses that refers to all the things that are on my screen. And I can make this a little bit bigger because I think I'm at 150, which includes Azure SQL Database Hyperscale, Azure SQL Managed Instance, Azure SQL Database, and SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines. John, tell me what's wrong with this screen.
I find the term, and you might disagree with me, but I find the term Azure SQL to be confusing because a lot of people think it's just the Azure SQL Database and MI stuff, but it actually encompasses SQL on VMs too.
I think it technically includes SQL Server.
It does. I think it does as well. I find that confusing. But the problem I have with this screen is I think Hyperscale should be just Azure SQL Database. The Hyperscale is just a performance tier within that product line. So I'm not sure why they broke it out. I know they're pushing that pretty hard, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, Hyperscale is the new default for general purpose, and we'll walk through building that. I was really happy. John, you probably remember in 2020 when I was at DCAC, we wrote the training for Microsoft for DP300, the Azure DBA exam. And every time we were referring to something in general, we had to say Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Managed Instance, or Azure Database. Azure SQL Managed Instance had a different name. I can't remember what it was. But you had to list them all out one by one. And thankfully, while we were writing that, marketing came up with a unified term. But like you mentioned, the term's not clear and it refers to a bunch of different things. So let's dive into Azure SQL Database, and we're going to say, let's first talk about this. Do you want to talk about the difference between a SQL database and a SQL Elastic Pool?
Sure. So an individual Azure SQL database is a database that you can confine to specific requirements in terms of compute and storage, and it relates to that single database by itself. An Elastic Pool is shared resources. So I can have a pool, let's say like 16 cores, and I can put 10 databases within that pool. I like to equate it to like a swimming pool, right? You have a pool full of water. Everybody jumps in and gets to enjoy the swimming in the pool. And that's basically the same kind of concept with the Elastic Pool. We get to share the storage, we get to share the compute. Databases will scale automatically up and down depending on their resource consumptions and what they need. Now, the real beauty about Elastic Pools is you get a consistent cost. So at 16 cores, let's say it's $5,000 a month. I don't know what the cost is, but I'm picking that number out of thin air. I put 10 databases in it, and then it's $5,000 a month. That's just what the cost is.
Or 20 databases.
Or 20, or 30, or 50, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the limit's what, 100?
I believe the limit's 100, yeah.
100? Yeah, it might be 100. I have 500 in my brain for some reason, but I don't
remember if it got raised. I knew they use snapshots. Well, no, that's MI. There may be some limitations around backup, so that would where I would think 100.
I think it's 100.
Yeah.
I think it's 100, but...
Yeah, and Elastic Pool's effectively like having a SQL server with a bunch of databases in it, where a SQL database is like having a single database instance. A couple of other things about Elastic Pools, they're really aimed for software as a service type applications. Read my Redmond Mag column last month on how to design for that. But what you're doing there is you really want all of those databases that have similar workload profiles. The recommendation from Microsoft, shocked I still remember this, is that the average versus peak utilization should be no more than 1.5 to 1. And what you don't want to have is one really busy database that consumes all of the resources in your pool. You want to kick that kid out of the pool. It's like if you have one kid who's like splashing all the water out of the pool, you want to kick them out. One of my favorite client stories was this medical company that one of our good friends, Flops, used to work for. And they had an Elastic Pool, and it was like all their apps for the the company, like the main application the company ran that was customer facing. And some developer decided to put a logging application, a logging database in there. Yeah, and they were like logging, I don't know why they were logging everything to a database in Azure. We'll talk about log analytics in a forthcoming episode. But yeah, so basically, and this was in the DTU days, so the logging database just on write IO alone consumed all the DTUs in the pool, and everything else was really, really sad. So you want all those databases to have similar workloads, but it's really cost effective. You don't want to just randomly throw a bunch of databases in a pool. It's typically when you're supporting the same kind of application.
Okay, yeah, I think they're super handy.
We're going to go on to create SQL database, and we've talked about resource groups, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new resource group here, SQL DB demos.
You might want to zoom in there.
Okay, yeah.
There you go. And remember, if you're new to the channel, a resource group is just a container of stuff. So if you're new to Azure and you've stumbled upon our channel.
So one of the things we're gonna go through, and we'll talk about some of these offerings in great detail. Like we're gonna have another session on Hyperscale, right? Will be our next one. But one of the things that I find interesting is there's a concept called a server here, and there's a serverless offering that you'll see on the next screen.
That's not confusing.
Yeah, it's not confusing at all. But the first step you have to do before you create a serverless database is to create a server. So I'm going to create a database name. My database name doesn't have to be special. It is local to my server and resource group. But when I go to create a new server, this has to have a globally unique name. So this is a globally unique namespace. So here we're going to call this Cloud Chronicles. And nobody has taken that. Hopefully. Yeah, nobody has taken that. Here we can configure this to use intra or intra and SQL. I'll make it use intra and SQL because I like having multiple options. But Microsoft's go ahead.
No, I do the same thing. I use both.
Yeah. Microsoft's recommendation is just to use intra, and it is definitely more secure.
For sure.
Because you really kind of can't protect against SQL injection spray attacks. We'll talk a little bit more about networking here in a bit. But we'll go ahead and create the server. The server doesn't cost you any money.
Yep.
It's just it's a virtual thing. I think effectively your server is like a node on Traffic Manager and maybe an app gateway internally in Azure. But it routes traffic to your database.
Okay. Typically we call it a logical server.
Yeah, good call. This is relative. Here you can once again choose if you want to use an elastic pool or not. We're going to say no. We also have development and production. And what this is going to do is set our compute and storage. And if you'll note, when I switch from production to development, it took me off of serverless. Like I said, we'll talk more about serverless. John, give me a sentence on what serverless actually means.
Serverless really just means that we can pause the database with it by itself. If it's an elastic pool, you can't pause it.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to quickly mention that is if you have a logical server with an elastic pool, you still get charged for the elastic pool. Mm-hmm. Even if the pool is empty, you still get charged for it.
Yeah, and the other thing about serverless is it can auto scale too.
Right.
So you can grow capacity, and that auto scaling happens online. So here we're going to configure the database, and this is going to be choosing our service tier, and this is where we're going to talk about some more stuff. We have a few service tiers, and this is similar to the managed instance, but different. The other really confusing thing is we have these two pricing models. We have the V-Core based pricing model and the DTU price basing model. What is DTU? Database transaction?
The database transmission unit?
No, it's either transaction or throughput.
Must be transaction then, because I think it's database transaction unit then.
Okay. That was the first way we could buy it.
Yeah. And that was confusing in itself.
And it was confusing as itself because you got some number of DTUs depending on your tier. Here's something I will tell you if you want to play with Azure SQL Database at home. There's a free trial where you get serverless, and they've made it better, so I think you can get through most of the month using it.
Yeah.
But if you're not on the free trial and you're actually having to pay and you want to learn how to use Azure SQL Database, use either basic or standard S0. Those are by far the cheapest tiers. The performance sucks.
Sure, agreed.
Basic is less than a full CPU. I think standard S0 is one CPU. but they're really cheap.
But if you click on basic, see what the price is.
Yeah, it's $4.90 a
Yeah, it's
month.
$5 a month for a database to play around with, and it is.
Yeah,
I looked it up. It is transaction.
yeah,
So
okay.
database transaction units.
And then here in S0 is 1472 a month. And if we go all the way up to an S3, it's 147. Microsoft at some point introduced these weird tiers like S4, S6, S7. The storage performance on those still kind of sucks. They use like slower storage. I think it's like slightly better than basic or S0, but it's generally speaking, the S tier was like if you needed, it was the rare database workload that needed high CPU but not really good storage. I haven't seen that many of those.
I don't have any clients running production on DTU unless it's like something really, really small, like a logging thing.
Yeah,
They just need to write to it.
yeah. The other thing about DTU and the reason why V-Core came in and became so popular is because you can bring your own licenses to V-Core.
Yeah.
With the DTU, there was no way to map cores.
Yeah.
So we have general purpose, most budget friendly, whatever the hell that means. We should actually yell at the team because I think them saying most budget friendly for general purposes would discourage me from wanting to use Hyperscale.
And isn't Hyperscale slightly cheaper?
They are the same price.
The same price. Okay, I thought they were slightly cheaper. I thought Hyperscale was slightly cheaper.
Let's demonstrate. We'll go provisioned
cool.
here, and we have 2 V-cores, and that's $372 a month. If we go Hyperscale, it should be Hyperscale's actually cheaper.
Yeah, I thought Hyperscale was slightly cheaper.
Yeah. They changed the pricing around there.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about Hyperscale, but it's effectively the same service. You have higher log throughput on Hyperscale than you do on general purpose. I really can't think of any reasons why I would choose general purpose over Hyperscale right now. Can you?
Not general purpose. There is a use case for business critical. If you
For sure.
Like in memory stuff.
Yeah.
Hyperscale is a different physical architecture behind the scenes.
General purpose maps.
You have a higher, because like can't you do like 100 terabytes in Hyperscale, and you're limited to what 4 terabytes in GP?
I think it goes to 8.
You go to 8.
Yeah, let's max out a GP with 128. No, it is 4 terabytes. I thought it was 8, but yeah.
But Hyperscale, you get a significantly larger footprint of storage if you need that larger.
Yeah.
And the backup, like they do a whole bunch of different things that are different. You know, backups are faster. They do snapshots and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Business critical, on the other hand, and business critical does kind of map to like P4 and higher in DTU model. If you go to 128 cores, you can get 4 terabytes in business critical. And you'll know the cost here, $64,766 a month.
Yeah.
It's not the most expensive SKU on all of Azure, but it is one of the most expensive.
Well, change the hardware from standard to like premium memory optimized.
Yeah. Good call. It's not available to me.
Oh, you're wrong. It's probably not available to your subscription.
Yeah, I don't have quota for it.
So if you really want to spend all the money, go to that hardware series and then scale.
I want to say it's like $100 and something thousand a month.
Yeah. And if you need that, please call DCAC to be your CSP.
Yes, please.
Shameless plug.
So a couple of things around business critical. We've talked about, if you've seen us talk about managed instance, which we did earlier, the same rules apply with business critical and GP. Business critical is local storage, locally attached or direct attached. So the storage performance is a lot better than in general purpose, and it's in an availability group, so you can connect to the readable secondary. Hyperscale also allows you to connect to secondaries, as you can see here, but you have to pay for them. So like here, if I add a secondary, I don't know why it's not letting me add a secondary. Good job, Portal. In theory, you can add, if I actually made that, it was a secondary. One of the other things here, we can choose to make a database zone redundant. So I'm going to go ahead and make this general purpose, even though we told you not to. You can make it zone redundant. There is additional costs for depending on the tier of your database. So I'm going to skip that because I'm being cheap. And Oh, my cost is really high because I still allocated entirely too much storage.
Perfect.
One other thing you want to notice is the amount of log storage that's allocated based on your,
Usually it's 30%.
yeah.
30% of your allocated storage will be for your log file.
Okay, so you can choose your backup storage redundancy. I'm using locally once again because cheap, but depending on your business needs, you might want to go zone redundant or geo and zone redundant. Geo zone redundant seems a little overkill to me, but your mileage may vary.
I typically use locally for like development purposes, and
Yeah.
anything in production is geo redundant at a minimum, geo
Mhm.
redundant. So I
The
can,
other thing that's not on the screen, but you can set once you have your database set is backup retention. One of the kind of interesting challenges around backups with Azure SQL databases, even though they're managed for you, you can't put a database in simple recovery mode. I want to say one thing very clearly, and John will hopefully confirm this with his bat. There is no difference in performance in SQL Server between simple and
no,
full recovery mode, and the other one, bulk log, that nobody ever uses.
I
The
agree.
only difference is how big your transaction log file is going to grow. And in the case of Azure SQL Database, how much your backups are going to cost. I have one customer where they do ETL into the databases every day, so they have a really high churn. So their backup costs were pretty high, and because their data was coming from a source system, we actually just do 1 day of backup retention because that's the minimum. You can't say no backup retention. But just know if you have a lot of churn in your databases, your backups can become a significant part of your cost.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about networking. Go ahead, John. Let's start with connectivity method.
Sure. Well, and I seem to recall like when this first started way back when, like the public endpoint was enabled by default,
Yeah.
which meant that you could reach that logical server publicly from anywhere on the internet, and then you had to like opt in with the firewall and like lock it all down. And
Hmm.
since then, Microsoft has flipped that around, right? So now the default I think is no access, but Joey can pick public endpoint, which will actually open traffic to the server name.database.windows.net, and then we can hit that from pretty much any IP address that's allowed in the firewall. Um, like
Hey,
one of the
hey,
notes,
hey, John. This allow Azure services and
I
resources
was
to
just
access
going to mention that.
server.
Nope,
Look, it looks like a good idea. That's
no,
only my
no, no.
Azure resources,
No,
right?
no, that is not just your resources. That's any Azure resource, whether it's in your tenant or somebody else's tenant. So we always, and I don't know that I've ever run into an option or a situation where I've actually enabled that. I've always disabled that, and then handle the networking in a different manner if I have to reach out and touch, a different tenant or something. So we always recommend to click no there to start
Mhm.
with. Don't ever open that up. Quite often I find clients that have gone into Azure and the net is obviously enabled because they think it's just their stuff, and it's not. It's anybody in Azure.
There's an asterisk there. Let's see what happens if I mess over it. Doesn't appear to
Really-
do.
Is there a disclaimer down below?
I don't see anything.
Of course not.
Uh,
Thanks,
yeah,
Gordon. And then
yeah,
obviously Joey can quickly add his current IP address if he clicks yes on that slider.
yeah. So
Right.
I can connect. Uh, the other big thing here is with private endpoint. So you may ask, like, what's the danger if I have a public endpoint of like but it's firewalled off to our corporate location? What's the danger of having that on the internet? There really isn't that much danger, to be honest. But there's a
There's
big
none. Yeah.
caveat. If you're not using private networking, you have no control of the data coming back. uh,
That's true.
that data is going to flow over the internet. So you become more vulnerable to data exfiltration attacks. If you want to pass that data through a stateful firewall, you have to use private endpoints. So you have the back end control of the routing. That's the real catch. And that's why having private endpoints are so important. We've talked about private endpoints, and you can use private link or you can use network endpoints. Private links, what you're going to want to use in a hybrid environment. Have you ever had to mess with this connection policy?
Mm-mm. Nope.
So I had a client when I was at DCAC where shocking, they had weird 40 gate stuff. And we had to change this to proxy, I think, to make private link work correctly.
Yeah, I've never had to mess with any of that.
They were doing some weird stuff. here's TLS, choose the latest one. Microsoft is
Please.
deprecating eventually these older ones. Okay, some security options. I'm going to ignore Defender for SQL because that's a different thing. We can talk about that later. Ledger is a feature around kind of blockchain that very few people use as well.
Yeah, do you have any clients using it? I don't.
No, I've never.
I've never run into one either.
I've talked to my wife about. She works for a financial services firm, and they've had some use cases for it, but they were mostly BS in my opinion. This is actually a pretty important one. Configure identities. So one of the things I always want to do is give my server a system managed assigned identity. And this is just like giving your server, your on-prem SQL server, a service account, except in Intra. You can do a bunch of different things with where you can have multiples or federated from another tenant. We're going to keep it simple here and just do one. What this means is you can give the server permissions in Intra, where it can go do other things or look up users when you go to create users. All your databases are going to be encrypted by default for TDE. Unfortunately, if you want to bring your own key, you can do that, but it's pretty painful, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to leave the defaults here. Secure enclaves, another feature. It requires a specific compute tier, and that's part of always encrypted. We're going to skip that, but just know if you want to have secure enclaves, which do you remember exactly what I think it allows you to do in-memory computations in an encrypted fashion?
It does, and all the decryption happens within the enclave, which is a secure module within the actual hardware. So it's more secure.
All right. Collation. We can start with an existing database. This is a lie. The data source cannot actually be a backup unless the data already exists in Azure. Boo.
Yeah, boo.
Yeah.
Allow us to restore.
Yeah. We would really, we would pay anything to be able to restore it. If you just need a sample database, you can have AdventureWorks LT. AdventureWorks LT kind of sucks. It doesn't have a lot of data. So Microsoft does have DAC packs or backpacks, which is the one with data.
DAC packs.
Yeah,
I think it's DAC packs.
For the real AdventureWorks databases.
I'll have to look it up.
I like to use those. This maintenance window is pretty important. Microsoft mostly does hot maintenance for Azure SQL Database. I interviewed one of the architects several years ago, and he explained how they can replace DLLs in memory while they're running. But there are downtimes that can happen. The default is pretty wide, 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. You can choose 10 p.m. to 6, Monday to Thursday, or you can choose 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. for the weekend. Like I say, the downtime hasn't been an issue with most of my clients. I haven't seen anywhere near this amount of downtime for anything, but just be aware of that that's a thing and it exists.
And it's worth noting that with the correlation, you can't change it once you create the database.
Yeah, very good point. And in Azure SQL Database, you also can't change the time zone. It's going to be in UTC.
Yep.
Okay, so
you can change it, but that too has to be at creation. But correct. The SQL database is UTC.
We're not gonna apply any tags. So I'm gonna be a bad.
Tag your stuff. Don't do what Joey's not doing, but tag your stuff.
Yeah, we'll tag it. Purpose. YouTube demo. There we go. We have one tag.
Yay!
What the hell? Did I not?
You didn't scale it down.
I guess I did not scale it down. Oops, my bad.
That's better.
That's much better.
You can scale that down too. Like 32 gigs, I think is default.
Yeah, we'll go 9. So
we'll go 9.
Charged. Okay.
You're gonna delete it anyways.
Yeah, good point. Create. And this should go pretty quickly. It usually takes like a couple of minutes to create a SQL DB.
I still think it's funny, to the logical server name has to be globally unique. And we've talked about this before. Like I've the old school domain squatting where like I've got server names that are empty, so it doesn't charge me anything, but nobody else can have those names. I still think I giggle when I think about it.
Well, the one we ran into a few months ago, what was it, Private Link, where
I still have it too.
Yeah, and where we broke Private Link by having a
server name called Private Link.
Yeah, the architect didn't think that was too funny.
I was at a conference recently, and I think I was talking to somebody at Microsoft, and I said, if you want something broken in Azure, just give it to Joey and I, and
Yeah,
we'll find a
yeah,
way to break it. Because we did break that. It's not the first thing we've broken in Azure either.
yeah. This is going to take a few minutes, so I think we'll probably break here. Join us again for subsequent sessions on Azure SQL Database. We're going to talk about Hyperscale next and how that works. John, do you have any other comments?
No, as easy as this was for you to create this database, this is again one of my favorite features in Azure. This platform is stable. I have tons of clients running on it, no problems. Scalability, high availability, it's all there. I love this product.
I think the other aspect is it's relatively cost effective too.
It is.
One of the my current project, and you may have heard me talk about it or seen me write about it on Redmond. My current project's on Postgres, and we're using RDS on AWS per the client's requirements. Uh, on the lower end of things, SQL DB is like a lot cheaper, and you're effectively getting SQL Server Enterprise Edition for
Yep.
for a very similar cost to what an open source database would be. And like there are a few places where I think Postgres does things a little bit better. I have this ongoing email thread with Connor and Bob about this, uh, and but man, there are a few places where SQL Server like column store indexes, execution plans. My execution plans for my Postgres functions are literally a black box.
It's no good. And
All right.
I love how easy it is to manage Azure SQL,
Yeah,
right? It's
for
super
sure.
easy to do like disaster recovery with a couple clicks.
And that's also one of the real benefits of elastic pools,
Yeah.
right? You because each if you're using single database, each database is its own Azure resource, which means you need to manage its performance and cost all independently. Whereas when you have an elastic pool, that pool becomes a single resource, and you're just managing that on its
Yep.
own. Well, with that, we'll close out this session and join us again next time when we'll be talking about Hyperscale.
Awesome. See you next time.
Okay.